These sci-fi movies were meant to be the beginning, but that never happened. In some cases, that was a real loss. In others, probably for the best. Anyway, let's take a look at what went wrong. John Carter started as one of the oldest and most influential sci-fi stories ever written. Edgar Rice Burroughs first introduced the character in 1912, decades before Star Wars, Dune, or Avatar, all of which would later borrow heavily from his ideas. Strangely, Hollywood kept circling the material for years without ever cracking it, even while Burroughs' other creation, Tarzan, became a constant screen presence. In the late 2000s, Disney finally took the leap with John Carter. Directed by Andrew Stanton, fresh off Wall-E, the film followed a Civil War veteran mysteriously transported to Mars, where Earth's gravity gives him superhuman strength. He gets pulled into a war between rival civilizations, teams up with the Martian princess Dejah Thoris, and slowly finds a new purpose on the red planet of Barsoom. Everything about the project screamed confidence. The film entered production in 2009, aiming for a 2012 release timed to the character's 100-year legacy. The cast was stacked, the world fully built, and the story clearly designed to continue. But behind the scenes, Disney was already coming off costly disappointments like Mars Needs Moms and hesitated on the release. Marketing only made things worse, never clearly explaining what John Carter actually was or why audiences should care. That left the film with $284 million worldwide on a production cost of over $300 million, and estimates at the time suggested it would have needed well over $600 million worldwide just to avoid losing money. What makes the failure sting is that the movie itself wasn't a mess. It was earnest, pulpy, and confident in its world. Taylor Kitsch and Lynn Collins had the presence to lead a franchise, and Stanton treated the material seriously, embracing its weirdness instead of apologizing for it. 2 sequels were already planned, The Gods of Mars and Warlord of Mars, but the box office killed them instantly. By 2014, the rights reverted back to the Burroughs estate. Dredd was a reboot of the British comic book icon Judge Dredd, a character who had already been burned once on the big screen. After the 1995 Stallone version, which softened the character and turned him into a generic action hero, Dredd's reputation needed serious repair. The budget was relatively modest, roughly $30 to $45 million, especially compared to the $90 million budget of the 1995 film. And the creative team leaned into what fans actually wanted. Alex Garland handled the script, Carl Urban stayed under the helmet the entire film, and the story was stripped down to a brutal, contained setup. Dredd and his trainee enter the Peachtree's megablock and become caught up in a high-stakes drug war. The plan wasn't just one movie either. Garland openly talked about a trilogy, with future films exploring Dredd's origins, Mega City 1, and villains like Judge Death. Critically, things went well. Reviews were mostly positive, audiences were generally on board, and the film quickly earned a reputation as one of the better comic book adaptations of the decade. But at the box office, it stalled. Dredd made roughly $41 million worldwide, not enough to justify sequels, even with its relatively controlled budget. Once again, marketing played a big role. The heavy push toward 3D meant slightly higher ticket prices, limited 2D options, and very little effort to sell the character beyond the fan base. Add the lingering memory of the Stallone film and a quiet release window, and awareness never really took off. Afterward, there were real attempts to keep it alive. Fans launched petitions, comics continued the story, and an animated Dark Judges spin-off even landed on YouTube. Streaming conversations followed, and a TV series, Mega City 1, was announced, only to stall and eventually disappear during the pandemic. It's hard not to feel like Dredd deserved better. David Lynch's Dune had to fail so Denis Villeneuve's Dune could exist. Calling the 1984 film a masterpiece would be a stretch. and most of the criticism aimed at it makes sense. But it became a strange pop culture artifact, undeniably ambitious, and a fascinating piece of 1980s cinema. The project moved forward with David Lynch directing, a young Kyle MacLachlan as Paul Atreides, and a mandate to turn Frank Herbert's dense novel into an accessible blockbuster. But the result was too much exposition, rushed characters, and a version that veered away from the book. Lynch himself later distanced from the theatrical cut. With a budget of around $40 million, Dune earned less than that worldwide. It didn't just miss mainstream audiences, it arguably missed its intended audience too. That mattered because sequels were already planned. Props were stored for reuse, Kyle MacLachlan was signed for multiple films, and David Lynch had begun writing a follow-up based largely on Dune Messiah. Once the box office numbers came in, everything stopped. Fast forward to today, and Villeneuve shows that Dune can work. Whatever you think of the new version, it's already heading toward a third film this year. How does a movie that makes $430 million worldwide end up being labeled a failure, especially with a $160 million production budget? Let's break it down. Warcraft didn't come together quickly or easily. The film was officially announced back in 2006 as a big-screen adaptation of Blizzard's massively popular video game. From the start, Blizzard was extremely cautious about who they would trust with their world. One early bid came from Uwe Boll and was flatly rejected. For a time, Sam Raimi was attached to direct, but that version never moved forward. After years of delays and development limbo, the project eventually landed with Duncan Jones in 2013. When Jones came on board, he reworked the story to give both humans and orcs equal weight, reshaping the film's core conflict instead of defaulting to a simple good versus evil setup. Production was long and expensive, with heavy reliance on visual effects and an extended post-production process. In North America, Warcraft barely landed, finishing with around $47 million total. Nearly 90% of the film's box office came from outside North America, including about $220 million from China alone. Without China, this would have been a full disaster. And even with it, the numbers still didn't add up. Studios only get a relatively small slice of ticket sales there, and trade estimates at the time suggested the film still lost money, roughly around $15 million. As for reception, the response was lukewarm at best. Critics were largely negative, especially in the US, pointing to uneven storytelling and characters that never fully came together. The film found some support among fans of the games who appreciated the scale and the orc storyline, but general audiences never really connected with it. The story itself was clearly designed to continue, leaving the door open for follow-ups. Jones expressed interest in a sequel, likely adapting Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness. But later he publicly admitted the chances didn't look good. In 2020, there were reports of a possible new Warcraft film, maybe even a reboot. So far, nothing has materialized. Battlefield Earth is so bad that it ends up being oddly charming in its sheer ineptitude. The story behind how it got made, especially the role of Franchise Pictures, could easily fill an hour on its own. But here's the short version. By 1995, right after Pulp Fiction revived his career, John Travolta suddenly had real leverage in Hollywood again. That opened the door for him to finally push a longtime passion project he had been carrying for years. The idea was to adapt a novel by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. Set in the year 3000, the story follows humanity rising up against the Cyclos, a tyrannical alien race that has ruled Earth for 1,000 years. Travolta openly described the book as Star Wars, only better, and even Pulp Fiction for the year 3000. He pushed hard to finally make the film, lobbying studios and anyone who might help. As one studio executive later put it, the enthusiasm was noticeable. In 1998, the project landed at Franchise Pictures. Their business model was basically this: announce a big budget, collect money from investors and foreign distributors, then quietly pad the numbers and hope no one asked any questions. For a few years, no one looked too closely. Then lawsuits followed, fraud allegations piled up, and franchise pictures collapsed. But as for the movie itself, the problem started much earlier. Even before release, the film was drowning in bad buzz. Rumors about Scientology, unusually tight on-set secrecy, and a leaked script that Hollywood insiders reportedly dismissed almost immediately. By the time it opened, the jokes were already written. Still, during the film's promotion, sequel plans were openly discussed. Battlefield Earth only covered part of the book, a follow-up was treated as a given, and Travolta confidently answered sure when asked about a second film. Then the movie hit theaters on May 12, 2000, and was almost immediately pushed aside by bigger releases. Critics tore it apart, audiences stayed away, and financially it collapsed fast. The budget was usually reported as somewhere between $65 and $75 million, though some later argued it wasn't quite that high. Either way, the worldwide box office stalled at around $29.7 million, and that was that. There were a few last attempts to keep it alive. An animated continuation was announced, and then quietly disappeared too. Maybe for the best.